No, I am not about to reiterate what has already been said if you click on the many articles about why Murderbot is a very entertaining watch. I am not focusing on Alexander Skarsgård's impressive portrayal of the bot or Noma Dumezweni's brilliant and heart-wrenching performance as Mensa. This video is not about the heart and hilarity of what life is like for a socially awkward security unit who really would rather spend its time watching shows rather than interacting with humans who always seem to find themselves either chasing death or being chased by death. No, this video is about the importance and relevance of Murderbot to us as a society right now, given all that is currently happening around the world. Because you see, Murderbot at its core, specifically its first season of the show that we are watching right now, has something very important to say about science and altruism, and that is the fact that they aren't mutually exclusive or at odds with each other. That matter of fact, the reason for science, the reason why we should put it to use alongside its beloved twin technology, is to help create a world where it can be repurposed to serve humanity's interests, to be for our betterment, and to not lose our soul in the process. And I don't know about you, but given the present state of the world, that is a message that I think we should all be imbibing in at this moment. Now, I will be the first to admit that episode 6 of Murderbot, and before you log out if you're worried about spoilers, don't be. I will keep this as spoiler free as possible because I think more people should absolutely be watching Murderbot. But as I was saying, I will be the first to admit that Murderbot episode 6 scratched a particular itch for me. Because you see, when Murderbot came in and just popped, no questions asked, no rooms for negotiations, I cackled so loud that I fell off of my couch. Which is in marked contrast to the members of my beloved Preservation Ox team who instead were appalled and horrified and just stunned at the turn of events. And whilst I was cackling like a banshee because I do believe that certain things were much deserved, if you know, you know, at the same time, seeing their reactions made me finally realize that there really are the moral standards of good within the world of Murderbot. And that is interesting to me because the reverse is often the case. Maybe it's because I'm currently watching The Expanse for the first time, which, by the way, expected the Expanse video to drop sometime this week. But as I was saying, maybe it's because I'm currently watching The Expanse. And to me, the character of Anthony Dresden and his supporter and financial backer, Jules Pierre Mao, are the stereotypical scientist who is willing to push the boundaries in order to make world-shattering discovery and is much desensitized to the cost that their scientific breakthrough requires and the number of human lives that have to be sacrificed for it. With Dresden and Mao, I see how science and capitalism can go hand in hand in pushing for the exploitation of the common man in order to serve its own end with a callousness that absolutely disregards what the end goal or results might be. And to me, that's a marked contrast with how we're seeing things play out with the Preservation Ox team. Matter of fact, the conversation between Bharadwaj and Labibi, which never happened in the books, mind you, because, Labibi isn't a book character, does speak to the two angles of this. The influx of capitalist interest in science and how it drives and powers scientific discovery while severely harming society as it exists, and the lack of ethics that certain scientists bring to the fore, whereby science isn't for the betterment of humanity and mankind, but instead just to be able to do their work and be on their own way. When Bharadwaj is having the conversation with Lebibi, and the latter is curious about how things operate at the Preservation Alliance, which is the commune that the Preservation Ox team are a part of, Lebibi is visibly surprised at Bharadwaj casually mentioning that they don't have work indentures at Preservation Alliance, which already sets them apart from the rest of the universe. But then Lebibi mentions that she would consider visiting after she saved up enough to be able to acquire a license to have a kid, and Bharadwaj is even more shocked. Because theirs is a society where everyone pitches in to help raise their kids, funded by them, collectively contributing to the community's pot. In this case, for the Preservation Ox team, with them selling the niche scientific discoveries that they get through their expeditions and funneling it all back home. A rebuttal that Libibi rolls her eyes at, and I think that there is quite the significance in that. Because you see, Labibi in that scene is meant to subtly hint at a lot of us, the audience's thoughts about socialist and communist values and their place within our society. Now, before you log off because you think that Noria is about to start preaching, I am not. What I would like to point out, however, is the fact that Libibi's reaction and that particular topic of discussion is one that echoes a conversation that has been happening within our society for decades, centuries at this point, and is actively going on right now. And that is the topics of eugenics. Because you see, when we say that the narrative being pushed actively so during this period when corporate interests are trying to further their capitalist aims, the narrative that only people who can afford to should be able to have kids, this is what we mean. It is the point where science meets capitalist interest to give us a eugenics talking point. Because you might disagree with me on an instinctual level, but I need you to take a moment and walk with me here and just really listen to and consider what I am saying. Nobody actually wants to be poor. However, capitalists require people being poor. It is a system that is actively created in order to push a wealth disparity that ensures that capitalists get to profit incredibly, immensely at the detriment of the people that they exploit so that they can make that obscene an amount of money. And in that statement by Labibi, Murderbot brings that up. Her saying it, even if it's all a wash, is still something that is believable because it actually happens within the world of Murderbot. People have to save up in order to earn licenses to earn the right to have children. It's a society that is so based off of individual interest that the thought of kids being raised on monies generated by the communities as a whole that goes to their upkeep is one that Labibi finds ridiculous enough to roll her eyes about, and that says a lot. And yet we have Bharadwaj speaking for the rest of Preservation Ox about their own way of life, about how their scientific discoveries isn't to pad their own personal pockets and fund whatever personal desires that they have as opposed to what Labibi wants. Instead, their love for and interest in science is turned towards a greater goal, one where they get to help others. And sure, like Labibi, some people might consider that naive, but I think it's incredibly beautiful and is a message that we need to collectively hear and listen to as a society. The fact that we basically drill everything down to what is it worth and what value is it bringing to me, instead of a more community-based approach of how would this serve the collective, would this help my people, would this help us be able to care for our young and those who amongst us do not have the capability to work, is something that I personally think has actively contributed to the mess that is the world we live in today. Murderbot as a show is telling us that it is time for us to extend a little bit of kindness to one another, to think not just of our own interests, but just how we can in turn help others as well. And in this era where science is reaching the point where we get to play God and technology is being used to push the thought, the narrative that everything that makes us human is replaceable, our capacity to create art and beauty, to think for ourselves and philosophize, to make mistakes and grow and learn and be. And all of this is driven by the inordinate belief that everything has to be tied to money, to fame and acclaim, like all of that is what matters. It is sad. It is sad and depressing and has been sending me into a spiral for months, years even. Which is why Murderbot for me has been a delight, because as much as I agree with Murderbot, the sec unit, that the Preservation Ox team are naive and trusting to a ridiculous degree, I'm also not going to overlook the fact that their heart is in the right place. The problem isn't with them. The problem is with the world around them, with organizations, structures, and groups like the corporation rim that are so centered on profits and money that they are willing to treat others as less than, based only upon the value that they bring and can provide. With Murderbot, the show is a call for us to consider that it is okay to be a good person. It is okay to be kind. It is okay to be pretty satisfied with the little you have, because you know that you get to stay in community with those who are like minded as you are, and together you would succeed and also thrive in your own way. And although to an outsider, this might seem like a very naive stance to take, the fact that the show so far and the books keep pushing that, keep showing us that the Preservation Ox team will always choose kindness first, will always think of how their actions can serve the greater good, will always put their brilliance and their love for science to the good of others. I don't know about you, but it kind of restores my faith in humanity, in what we are capable of if only we try. And this is a message we all need to hold on to as we navigate these times. Of course, the fact that this message is balanced with Murderbot and its eliminate all threats first approach makes me a very happy camper and keeps the show just right for me. But of course, that is just me, as always, with my thoughts. There is a possibility that you might not agree with it, but I don't know. There's a part of me that wishes for goodness in others, that hopes that you do as well. But whatever the case may be, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're watching along with Murderbot, let me know. Would you love to live at the Preservation Alliance if for some reason we were suddenly dropped into that world? Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share it if you want to. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.